Hey everybody, welcome to the West Dakota Dad. This is my podcast where we talk about faith, family, and life. This is episode number 11 with the new year. 2021 is finally here. We can shut the door on 2020. We have a brand new calendar, blank slate to basically make the best of this year. We can say goodbye to 2020, kick it in the dust. Obviously, things will carry over to 2021, but for the most part, it's a sense of renewal because we get to switch our calendars to January and focus on a new year. With that being said, a lot of people tend to have New Year's resolutions this year. And I used to work at a gym, and so anytime January, February, March, sometimes April-ish comes around, I always dreaded the New Year's resolution crowd because there would be such an influx of people coming to the gym. And I'm not a big crowd person as it is, so when I would go to the gym regularly, now I'm fighting with people that don't know proper gym etiquette by taking all the weights or hogging like 8 machines. And I'm not hating on those people for trying to better themselves and everything, but it was frustrating to me as a regular to try to get what I normally do done in a timely manner because you're always having to wait for stuff. Now, with that being said, last year about this time, I made an unintentional New Year's resolution. I was feeling groggy from the holidays. I decided I needed to get back on the bike. We had bought a NordicTrack bike the previous spring for Mother's Day and everything, because now having a new baby at the house, it was tough to go to the gym, and because it would basically take up our entire night to get home, get ready. What do we do with our child? And so we decided that we wanted to be able to do more things at home, and then it wouldn't take as much time where we had to travel and everything. So we saved up some money, we bought a NordicTrack bike, and now we get to have that experience at home. Not saying it's a coat rack, it doesn't get quite as used as often as we were thinking it would, but we still use it. We do still use it. And last year in January, I decided that I was going to make a goal for the month of January. I was going to ride 120 miles on this NordicTrack bike, and then I was just going to try to keep that pace the whole year. And I achieved it. I achieved it in January. I actually pedaled about 126, 128-ish miles. I can't remember exactly what it was because it was a year ago. And I felt great, except for February. I decided, I'm going to step back a little bit because that was really exhausting. So at the end of February, I was down to 50 miles by the end of the month. So still not terrible, but that's less than half of what I did in January. And then March, I really took my foot off the pedal legitimately, and I totaled up 0 miles. So yeah, I kind of felt like I guess you could say a quote-unquote New Year's resolution person. But the only reason why I pick on that is because I can relate to it now, because I understand having a kid, and but my excuse was not even going to the gym. It was just the lack of motivation. I'd take my foot off the pedal. I'd see that comfy couch there, put on some flannel pajama pants or sweatpants or something, just kind of kick it. Or, just be like, end of the hard work day, I'm like, you know what? The beer really tastes good right now or something. And then, we have, sweets and stuff. So I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Next thing I know, I'm back to where I started. But that's just lack of motivation. But I think that's kind of like human nature. I'm not perfect. But one thing, as a segue into what we're going to talk about today, is we're going to be talking about the story of David. And the reason why I chose David for this New Year's podcast is the fact that, not saying that David's a New Year's resolution person by any means, like his life or anything, but it kind of makes me think about his life and what he accomplished, how hard it took him to accomplish, and then just one instance kind of made him fall, in a sense. It made him stumble, we'll just say that. So we all know King David. He, I guess, is sought after, or is seen as one of the greatest kings of Israel of up to date or whatever. I shouldn't really say that because I don't know Israel's entire history, but according to some passages in the Bible, he's a great king of Israel. So we all know him, though, from the story of David and Goliath. He was a small shepherd boy, and he took down the giant Goliath. Well, that's a huge feat right there. And then he ended up surviving King Saul, who was a very flawed person. As we, if you've read the 1 Samuel, you'll understand that. He survived King Saul, and many times that Saul was trying to kill him. And David even had the upper hand to turn around and try to kill him, but he chose not to. David was a very godly man, and he chose not to do that. And then he was a great leader. He won lots of battles and really basically put Israel on the map, I guess you could say. But once we get to 2 Samuel, and you get to chapter 11, it shows that David, I guess you could say, he let his foot off the pedal. He kind of set himself up, put himself in a situation where his temptation got the best of him, and he fell. So in chapter 11, it describes him at home while his army was out in battle, and which is not typical. Normally he would be out in battle with him, from my subtext in the Bible here, and he decided to stay home. So he was on his palace roof. He just woke up from a nap. He's looking out over the kingdom, and then all of a sudden, this described as a beautiful woman had caught his eye, and she was bathing. Now, he probably should have been like, oh, I didn't see that, and just go about his business and pretend like it never happened. But he didn't. He actually acted on it. He had his servants and everything basically bring her to him. He found out her name was Bathsheba. She was the wife of his leading officer, Uriah the Hittite, and he ended up sleeping with her, and she became pregnant. Well, now this starts a downward spiral of giving in to, I guess you could say, bad behavior, sin, all of the above. And he tries to cover it up by bringing Uriah home to sleep with his wife to cover up the pregnancy, to make sure Uriah thought it was his baby. Well, that didn't work. And so then he eventually arranged for Uriah to be set up in battle to basically die in battle. And that happened. And then he takes Bathsheba as his wife. So not exactly something a person wants to be remembered for, being one of the greatest kings of Israel. But one thing I'd like to read to you guys here real quick is the Lord had sent him a man to rebuke him named Nathan the prophet. And I'll read the first part of chapter 12 here in 2 Samuel. It says, this is where Nathan rebukes David. So the Lord sent Nathan the prophet to tell David this story. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich and one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle. The poor man owned nothing but one little lamb he had bought and raised. He raised that little lamb, and it grew up with his children. It ate from the own man's plate and drank from his cup. He cuddled his arms like a baby daughter. He cuddled it in his arms like a baby daughter. One day a guest had arrived at home of the rich man. Instead of killing the animal from his own flock or herd, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it and prepared it for his guests. David was furious. As surely as the Lord lives, he vowed, any man who do such a thing deserves to die. He must repay 4 lambs to the poor man for the one he stole for having no pity. Then Nathan said, you are that man. Ooh, yeah, that is... Oh, man, I don't even know how to describe it. It just gave me goosebumps when you don't see yourself as doing something wrong, but you see a very similar story and you know that person's doing wrong, and then have those tables turned on you to be like, no, see, this is what you're doing. This is what you did. And so then later on in verse 13 of chapter 12, David confesses his guilt. And then David confessed to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, yes, but the Lord has forgiven you, and you will not die for this sin. Nevertheless, because you have shown utter contentment for the word of the Lord, by doing this, your child will die. So Nathan rebukes David. The thing David does differently than some other people is he confesses that he was guilty and basically asks for forgiveness. He gets forgiveness, but he has to endure a punishment. And so he does. And that's one thing I kind of wanted to mention, is just like, again, not saying that the story of David is just one big New Year's resolution and that we all can relate to him because we all mess up. Well, I guess we can relate to him because we do all tend to mess up. But I think some of the things I just kind of wanted to take away from this is not saying that you are David, you're going to defeat your giants, you're going to be this mighty king. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I think we can all relate in a little bit that we tend to put ourselves in situations that will set us up to fail. Say, just maybe an example, like say that you have a drinking problem. You want to stop drinking. Well, the last place you should be is going to a bar or an event that revolves around a lot of drinking. You basically kind of, you tend to gravitate, or how does this saying go? The people you're around you tend to adapt to the people around you. That was a very long way of trying to get that out, by the way. But, so if he was at battle, he would have still been focused on the battle that's at hand and helping his army become victorious. But he didn't. He stayed back where he basically had no one there to hold him accountable, and he fell into a temptation. And it's kind of important why, a person would attend a church and have that fellowship of people out in your community. Not to say that they're all looking at you going, oh, don't do that. But you tend to, once you're around those like-minded people, those people that want to serve God, that want to do good and everything, you tend to want to do the same instead of meandering around by yourself. So that's kind of what I want to get out today. So just remember, if you do mess up, you can be forgiven. However, you reap what you sow. And so, yeah. Really didn't plan out how I was going to close this podcast out, but I think I kind of got the point of what today's episode was about. I hope we all have a good new year. I hope that this year brings a lot more positivity. Like I said a couple episodes ago, I had some positivity in 2020 despite how overall the year was. I hope 2021 has even more. So until next time, I am the West Dakota Dad. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the West Dakota Dad podcast. If you like what you heard, please drop a rating, share with your friends, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any content.